Mr. Speaker, that we're looking at, really, the most important one, Mr. Speaker, has to do with the Section 8 of the amendments, validation. Mr. Speaker, under the old Act, it was made effective from the first day, no, that was not the Act, it came into force on November 2017, is it? In October 2021. Through an oversight, Mr. Speaker, charge was still being laid in the name of the Commissioner of Police. There are many persons arguing this particular legal point, Mr. Speaker. Some persons are saying that, look, that means that all charges laid after the date of the operation of this particular act are null and void and therefore have no legal effect. I am pleased, Mr. Speaker, to advise all Antiguans and Barbudans that we have had several opinions from expert lawyers around the world that that is not necessarily the case. This is not the place to argue a legal point. The place to argue the point is in the court of law. And anytime that is necessary, I'm prepared and ready, myself personally, to go and argue that particular case. I'm satisfied, Mr. Speaker, that the experts who advised me from England, from Trinidad, and Jamaica, that nothing successfully can flow from validating acts taken after the date when the act became operational. I'm satisfied to the extent that I feel absolutely sure. But I won't argue it in here. I'll argue it myself personally in the court of law for those persons who think that they've got a reason of success. Mr. Speaker, what do I mean by that? By analogy. Mr. Speaker, you were unlawfully removed, so the court held, from your position as chairman of the Electoral Commission, and a certain gentleman named Juno Samuel was put in your position for several years. The Court of Appeal held that your removal was unlawful. So what did they do? Could it be that all of the acts taken by Mr. Samuel as chairman of the Electoral Commission had no effect? The answer clearly was no.
The signing of the registers.
That's correct.
Signing of the registers.
Actually signing registers. That's what I'm telling you. That's why I want this matter to come up to court. I'll clean them to bits in this one. Sign the registers. Sign the register. But you know what my friend, Mr. Justin Simon, did? Very cleverly did, sir. He came to this parliament. And Mr. Speaker, number 4 of 2013, this is what he did. The act is called the Representation of the People, Validation of Acts and Decision of the Commissioners Act 2013. That's all he did. He came to this honorable house and actually passed this act, validating the actions of Juno Samuel prior to the Court of Appeals case and the decision. Therefore, my friends behind me, what's to my attention? This act is to validate acts and decisions taken by the commissioners appointed by the Governor General pursuant to 24(3) of the Representative People Act number 12 of 2011. And it goes on to state, Mr. Speaker, and made effect to the fact that all the actions taken by Juno Samuel by signing the register were deemed to have been lawfully executed. Correct. In the Bahamas, thank you, Mr. Hodge, for your extremely good research. In another matter, trade unions an act to validate certain trade unions deemed not to exist in consequence of the failure to comply with transitional requirements of Industrial Relations Act 1970, upon which the repeal of the Trade Union Act was done. In other words, actions were taken in the Bahamas by a union. They said because there was no legal jurisdiction at the time, that all actions taken by them were unlawful, wrong, void ab initio, of no legal effect. That, Mr. Speaker, was merely done by going to the Parliament and validating the act of the person. And that's what we're doing here in this amendment, Mr. Speaker. So what has my drafters done? On to Section 8. Section 27A. Validation of criminal proceedings instituted since the commencement of this Act. Says this: criminal proceedings instituted by or in the name of the Commissioner of Police, by Officer of the Royal Police Post of Antigua and Barbuda, or Officer of the ONDCP, from the date of the commencement of this Act and up to and including April 30th, 2023, are deemed to have been instituted with authorization of the DPP, and for the purposes of this Act are deemed to have been validly instituted.